was border related, up to almost 45% now, 45%. We've seen the pursuits. Last year, we put 180 people in jail for pursuits that were deadly pursuits. When I say deadly, driving at 100 miles an hour plus, endangering communities. Some resulted in deaths. Some we interdicted before they killed somebody.
When I'm president, we will be a strong country again. People will never be playing these games like they've been doing to the United States of America. They don't respect us anymore. They respected us greatly 2.5 years ago. They don't respect us anymore. Thank you very much.
Well, this report today is going to attempt to go into the true reason for Ukraine, leading to a deep, dark world of Satanists and their craving for children. It will not be easy to go through, but we will attempt, or I'll attempt to, through prayer, keep it as clean as possible and not too disturbing, but we must expose evil and find out the enemy that we're up against. This is a spiritual battle. I've said it many times. And also a fight for our freedom, a fight for truth, and an ability to share information that we're not going to see anywhere else, at least not on mainstream media. And it's thanks to many of the Anons and the many people out there working together to take the time to put information together for us to share. Here we go.
A major disaster is brewing. If I were president, the Russia-Ukraine war would never have happened, never in a million years. But even now, if I were president, I'd be able to negotiate an end to this horrible and rapidly escalating war within 24 hours. It can be done. You have to say the right things, not the wrong things. I think we helped lead Russia into that war by saying, well, if they took a small part of the country, that would be okay. Such a tragic waste of human life. When you look at all that's happening there, those cities are obliterated. First comes the tanks, and then come the nukes. Get this crazy war ended now. It can be done. And in fact, it's easy to get done. When I'm president, we will be a strong country again. People will never be playing these games like they've been doing to the United States of America. They don't respect us anymore. They respected us greatly 2.5 years ago. They don't respect us anymore. Thank you very much.
So it's amazing the time that's been taken out to not only expose Ukraine for what they really are under the Bidens and their cover-up, to make sure that none of this is exposed, what we're about to show you, some stuff we've already talked about in the past. But at the same time, President Trump has the ability to share with those that could care less about what's going on behind the scenes in Ukraine. He's got an opportunity to share that, you know what, we can stop these wars. We can stop what these guys are up to. And he says, when I am president, we'll make America great again. He continues to use his tough rhetoric and is definitely big on leadership role, putting out information for all to see. Right here, he says this is an all-time classic. Will this guy get the death penalty for treason or an award for hating our country? Who's he referring to? The FBI official who investigated Trump ties to Russia, arrested for illegal ties to Russia. It's a clown show. The FBI caused big election interference. So much for the big lie. So much for the big lie. Their lie, constantly harassing, going after our psyche through the mainstream media, and more, lying to everyone over and over again that Russia was somehow involved in President Trump leading our country, leading the entire earth. And again, I've said it many times, and we remind folks that one of the first things that he signed was an executive order to go against those crimes against humanity. He knew exactly what he was up against. He knew the thousands of years that they have been doing very evil things, which revolve around children and money, which we're going to show in a moment, would happen. Now, to keep the clown show going, to keep everybody's eyes off of President Trump and continue to make it look like those that are fighting for freedom and exposing Ukraine for what it really is, exposing Planned Parenthood for what it really is, abortion for what it really is, and you see all the ties together more and more, these folks have to protect themselves. So what do they do when they're not brought in to help with the investigations? In other words, destroy them. They go ballistic. Here's one going crazy.
Weaponizing hate against a black, beautiful Muslim woman. Where are the free speech warriors today? The hypocrisy is obvious to the American people. You are showing who you are.
The world is waking up, and it's an amazing thing to see it finally happening. Some people have been awake for a few years now, but there are others who have been awake for decades. For decades, we have laughed them off as crazy, as insane, as conspiracy theorists. And the truth is, they have known the whole time. I can't imagine how difficult and lonely it must have been for all of these people who knew what our governments were planning. I laughed at these people myself. I laughed at one man in particular when he tried to warn me 15 years ago. Billy, you tried to warn me in 2007, and I quite literally rolled my eyes at you. You tried to warn me about every single thing that's happening today, and I called you crazy. So today, I want to take this chance to apologize from the bottom of my heart, because you are 100% right.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show here on the formerly known as the Fire Rises channel. It is January 24th, 2022, and I wanted to do this video because there are clips in this video that I've used before which got my channels terminated, but sometimes you just don't care anymore. And I want to make sure everybody sees this, and it is extremely important that you watch the clips. I'm first going to show you the clips from the World Economic Forum talking about technology, mixing humans and machines. It's a quick clip. And then I want to show you about the quantum computers and how they talk about summoning spirits / demon-like things, putting them inside of you. And well, it's all frightening stuff from these people who try to play Dr. Frankenstein, but you need to see it. So make sure you watch and share it. Watch it in full. If you need to take breaks because you're at work or you don't want to watch it all at once, that's fine. I just highly recommend you watch it in full. Let's start with the World Economic Forum.
We are wondering what is happening to the world. Everything is changing.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high-tech we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
Inside our own heads is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe.
You might ask yourself, can we get to be superhumans?
Right? Now, so you understand the fact that they want to do this to humans. So the only way they can do this by humans is by getting something inside of humans. And they know that people wouldn't sign up for this type of thing. Would they? Doubtful. I mean, there are some dumb people that probably would. Now, let's move on to step 2 of this. The other part of this has to do with tearing of the veil, removing what we're seeing and bringing over what's on the other side. Now, that sounds like crazy talk. I totally understand that. It's hard to comprehend. You have to realize that matter, right? We learn about matter in school, about two things could be happening in the same space at the same time. That's them trying to tell you that there is something happening in the same space at the same time. Obviously, there's a lot of people who believe in ghosts. As Christians, we believe in spirits and demons and things on the other side. We know that there is a veil, and they are attempting to lift and break through that veil, to make humans live amongst these things. And they're using what they're calling quantum computers, Q computers, whatever you want to call them, the D-Wave computers, to be able to make this happen. I'm going to show you a clip from a guy named Gordy Rose. This guy is as bad as they get. This is like the equivalent of Dr. Frankenstein, somebody who, you know, you never would hear about, who makes not billions, but millions of dollars off of government grants, which pretty much comes from your tax money, so that he can experiment and try to figure out how to bring these things over and how they can digitally do this by playing with the magnetic fields. And that's the key right there, the magnetic fields, the energy in the airwaves, okay? And by having this inside of you, this is where it all works, right? In the airwaves, the magnetism, the frequencies, okay? Here he is, this Dr. Frankenstein, talking about how this is what they're trying to do, and even admitting to summoning demons. You have to listen to it in full. Summoning demons, trying to bring over what's on the other side and create a new world.
Like this. So, I'm the President of the United States. So I received this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years, or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You got to be ready. Now just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, you know, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about quantum computers and why people care so much about them. There are literally tens of thousands of some of the brightest people in the world today trying to build these machines and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why. In my last 15 years of working on this type of stuff, I found that scientists divide up into two categories of zealots about this field. The first half are people who are absolutely entranced by the physics of these things. This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes. And that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch and whether you chose to come to this session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within, our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. They want to understand the world. They want to understand the universe, how it all works. There's another type of person who tends to come from the computer science side that's like, yeah, okay, that's all great. But there's a different thing going on here, which is just as exciting, if not more, and that these machines that supposedly can do this wild stuff, let's forget about how they work, if you could build one, could solve problems that you could never, ever solve with any computer of the sort that we built. If you took every single atom of silicon in the world and made the most sophisticated conventional Intel-style processor that you could build, there are problems we know of that I could write down on a sheet of paper that you could never, ever, ever solve with that thing, that you could with this kind of machine. So that's very exciting. Humans use tools to do things. If you give humans a new kind of tool that can do things that you couldn't otherwise do, imagine the possibilities. So you may think, well, this is all fine and dandy, but aren't these things in the realm of theory and speculation, kind of in the same regime as other futuristic things you may have heard of, which may be allowed by the laws of physics, but aren't here yet? That's not true. There are, in fact, many of these machines deployed now in openly available research centers following the model that was used to introduce supercomputers to the world. They're too big and ornery and difficult to operate to put in your home, too expensive also, but you can give them to a place which will manage them as a shared resource that will offer that service to the world. And there are two of these now. One of them is at the University of Southern California. So these types of computers now are being thought of in the same way. They're not terrifically powerful yet, but they're doing something completely different than what your computer does. And that thing is like flight. It gives these computers access to these new resources, maybe you could call them parallel universes, in order to do something that you couldn't otherwise do. Steve Jurvetson has been a longtime friend and investor in the company, and for those of you who don't know him, he's
a Silicon Valley investor who's probably the smartest VC that I know of, and certainly the one that's the most attuned to technological trends. He's on the board of SpaceX, Tesla, Synthetic Genomics, which is Craig Venter's company that's trying to build artificial life, and D-Wave, and that's it. And this is his particularly poetic way of framing the difference between the machines we build and conventional computers. This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. At the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time, quote unquote. And I'm using those words because the English language was developed before we had concepts to describe what these things actually are doing. But I'm going to give you a roundabout way of understanding this. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In the conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, and never anything else.
It's important to understand what the 5G is doing and what they say it's doing. We're told on the IEEE beamforming document that this technology cooked your eyes like eggs in World War II. And you all need to understand these are military weapons. These are assault frequencies. If you garner nothing more than that, that's what you need to know. It's microwave radiation warfare, is what this is.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the National Press Club Federal Communications Commission Chairman Tom Wheeler.
It's an honor to be here at the National Press Club. The first generation wireless 1G was voice. The second generation 2G allowed both talk and text. The third generation 3G, the internet, in a limited way. And today's technology, 4G, completed that digital migration. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way.
This video is brought to you by the number 5 and the letter G. And pretty soon, everything else will be too.
You must consider the whole part played by electricity in nature. Human beings cannot go on developing in the same way in an atmosphere permeated on all sides by electric currents and radiations. It has an influence on the whole development of man. This life of men in the midst of electricity, notably radiant electricity, will presently affect them in such a way that they will no longer be able to understand the news which they receive so rapidly. The effect is to damp down their intelligence. Such effects are already seen today. Even today, you can notice how people understand the things that come to them with far greater difficulty than they did a few decades ago. Rudolf Steiner, 1924. Rudolf Steiner noted that in 1924, since then our atmosphere has become far more permeated with electric waves of widely diverse types. There's no doubt now that electric waves, electromagnetic forces, cause direct biological effects. There's thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this subject. There's no doubt about it. But what are these effects? How are they affecting us? What can we do about it? We're now at a stage where we're putting in what's called 5G, which is a special type of broadcast for high-density information transfers. And it turns out that this is the same frequency bands that are used in crowd dispersal weaponry.
Well, I joined the Royal Navy in 1960, and I specialised in microwave warfare. Radar, obviously, which uses microwave, but they don't just teach you radar, they teach you all about microwaves and other uses. So I understood about microwave warfare and how it can damage people, how it can harm people. Microwaves then were used as weapons, as they are today. It is a perfect stealth weapon. And when governments don't like a group of people, for instance, the ladies who protest at Greenham Common in England about the American missile base they camped, they were microwaved. We microwave Catholics in Northern Ireland to make them sick. It goes on all over the world. And it's a weapon that you don't know you're being targeted, because the dose is very, very low, which is actually more dangerous than a high dose. It's very, very low, and it may take a year or two, but you can cause neurological damage and cancers with low-level microwaves, and you can make all your opponents sick. It's a perfect weapon for a government.
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in the 5G world. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, requiring massive deployment of small cells. We won't wait for the standards. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners, and that's damn important. The interconnected world of the future will be the result of decisions we must make today.
The main issue before us today is Senate Bill 637 and Senate Bill 894, the former by Senator Hune, the latter by Senator Knopf. We're going to invite the first four witnesses in support of the legislation, and that would be John Jones with Sprint, David Lewis and Andy Emerson with AT&T, Neil Krevda with Verizon, and Frank Iacovetti Jr. with T-Mobile.
So be straight with me. Is it true?
It could be.
No, well, very few cases. There was an unfortunate incident out in Iowa. Look, gentlemen, practice these words in front of the mirror. Although we are constantly exploring the subject, currently there is no direct evidence that links cell phone usage to brain cancer.
I'm Sharon Goldberg. I'm an internal medicine physician. I've practiced medicine for 21 years, and my background is mostly academic, internal medicine, hospital-based, clinical research, and medical education.
I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. I worked on space station designing the cabling system for the airlock module, where I was responsible for EMI/EMC analysis, which is electromagnetic interference, electromagnetic compatibility.
I am a professor in the Department of Epidemiology, Biostatistics, and Occupational Health, and I teach there both toxicology and health effects of electromagnetic radiation.
My name is Daphne Tachover, and I'm the founder of an organization called We Are the Evidence. We are an organization that represents the many adults and unfortunately many children who have become very sick from wireless technology radiation.
There seems to be a couple false Easter eggs being put out there right now. I want to make sure we dispel that right off the gate.
The effects of wireless on health scientifically are very, very clear.
So it's always pushed back to the definition of an acceptable level of radiation. And that's what this is, by the way. This is about radiation.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period.
My name is Dr. Angie Kolbeck. I've been reviewing the studies showing the impacts of wireless radiation on our health, and there are now thousands of studies showing the following adverse health impacts to wireless radiation: cancer, oxidative damage, DNA damage, DNA failure.
Things like memory, dizziness, anxiety, brain fog.
Headaches, nosebleeds, cognitive problem, exhaustion.
We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure.
Short and long-term memory loss, decreased attention spans, lower reaction times, even involuntary contractions of muscles causing misalignments of spines and jaws.
Breast cancer. We suddenly have breast cancer in women who have no DNA predisposition.
Disrupted immune function and change in stress proteins, reproductive and fertility effects.
There are dozens and dozens of studies that show beyond any doubt what this radiation is doing to our sperm. Now, if you take the cell phone out of your pocket, the sperm will recuperate within 3 to 4 months. What would not recuperate would be the damage to the DNA of the sperm. That is irreparable. The wife of the ex-governor of Indiana was diagnosed with glioblastoma. Same brain tumor Ted Kennedy had and John McCain had. Did you look at John McCain's scar? This is a cell phone brain tumor. LeBron James, one of our sports people, had a salivary gland tumor. That is another cell phone tumor. You didn't hear about it because immediately after that was discovered, he was paid by Samsung to become their spokesperson.
We are seeing increases in brain tumors.
We're seeing increases in Alzheimer's. We're seeing increases in all of the neurotransmitter diseases, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's. These are all disease systems that are known to be associated with low-level energy exposures.
We talk about 24/7, around-the-clock exposure, wherever you are and your whole body. You never get away from it. And it seems from our studies that maybe your immune system can cope with for a time, but it will deteriorate. Then the irradiation will definitely damage cells at their deeper level, and the question is what will then happen?
These are out of peer-reviewed papers, so these are not just hypochondriacs thinking that they're doing it. We're having real problems with this.
This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do.
There is scientifically evidence that is so strong that you can be certain that the standards used by the FCC to manage health effects are wrong.
We need to start measuring how much radiation are people being exposed to before we roll out 5G. There are 4 kinds of electromagnetic fields that we know are harmful to human health. So radio frequency radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, and electric fields. Okay? Our exposure, any given person, and all humans are affected by EMFs. What is our exposure in a day? It's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up.
The data we're going to look at are all published science, testing results, or public standards. At the bottom end of the radiation scale of what's called power density, or signal strength, is the minimum level at which cell phones will work, which was found to be 0.2 billionths of a microwatt per centimeter squared. Pine needles were found to age prematurely at 0.000027. At short-term exposures of 0.05, children aged 8 to 17 experienced headache, irritation, concentration difficulties, and behavioral problems. 0.1 is the biobiology or building biology guideline for extreme concern. 1.0 produced sperm DNA fragmentation and a decrease in sperm viability in vitro. Also at 1.0, the science shows the following bodily effects can occur: headaches, dizziness, fatigue, insomnia, chest pain, difficulty breathing, and indigestion. 2.5 saw altered calcium metabolism in heart muscle cells. 4.0, changes in the hippocampus affecting brain memory and learning. And at 6.0, DNA damage in cells. So where are smart meters on this list? Electrical Power Institute in December 2010 measured a single Itron smart meter with pulses up to 7.93 microwatts per centimeter squared. Our own testing indicated approximately 8.0 with 1 meter. These tests are at a close distance, approximately 1 foot away from the meter, but an infant's crib could be just as close on the other side of the wall where the meter or bank of meters are installed. Even though there are all these known health effects at levels far lower, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg see fit to set the standard at 9.5. And China, Poland, and Russia, 10.0. This is the same level at which behavior has been altered, producing reflexes of avoidance following 30-minute exposures. A room of 12 smart meters, a very common and even a conservative number in an apartment building, tested at 19.8 microwatts per centimeter squared. This is hundreds of times higher than levels which clearly indicate harmful effects. So how can utilities and governments get away with forcing these devices on everyone? This is how. In Canada and the US and several other civilized countries, the safety limit is set at 600 to 1,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. This so-called safety limit is literally tens of thousands of times higher than levels which are known to damage health according to peer-reviewed published science.
Faster, better, more reliable internet. That's the promise of 5G technology, but there is also the peril. Health hazards, associated with radio frequency that is higher also, and requires more transmitters and antennas.
The film you're about to see has no characters. If you spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies on matter. Everything owes existence solely and completely to sound.
Is and why she's up here on this screen, if it is a she. I want to shout out to Norman Traversy. I had work and business to take care of today, but when I got home, Norman had shouted out to me and left a message that he's up there with the truckers and did I want to talk to them. And I couldn't do it today. I can't do it tomorrow. As I've told you guys, my health takes priority. But at some point, I would like to get together with Norman and talk about his experience with the truckers and all the stuff he saw and experienced there in Canada. And I hope you guys would be interested in hearing about that too. Norman, Feet on the Ground with Amina, and that Make Canada Great Again, the extraordinary, I don't know what you would call it, the dance of the truckers, something like that. Anyway, it was spectacular, and I want to hear all about it. And my apologies, Norm. I just got a lot of medical things going on, appointments, testing, things like that, and stuff I have to get for myself and stuff I have to do for myself. And I don't want to sit here and talk about all my aches and pains because this. Okay, this is the supposedly first Playboy transgendered model. But I want you to take a look at this.
Well, Victoria's Secret had the fashion show for 2016 last week, I believe. This one was quite shocking. I believe all of them are trannies. You can just look at the waist, the hip bone, the overall torso. The hips, of course, on a male and a female are different. On a real female, they are designed to allow for childbirth. On a man, these things are unnecessary. Now, they do a very good job of disguising it, but you can see on this one, very butch-looking face overall. They have the classic tranny hooker look. Now, if you live in the suburbs in the United States in some small town or something like that, you're not going to see tranny hookers walking down the street. You have no frame of reference. But you can see that Victoria's Secret is basically a cabaret show. It's one of these tranny cabaret shows. That's all this is. These are tranny cabaret shows. Look at this person right here. Look at that waist. Are those childbearing hips? Those hips are different than men's. Who's got the childbearing hips? The singer or the model? Who's taller? Bruno Mars, man. That guy's a woman. Anyone who's played in the Super Bowl at the halftime show is a tranny, an Illuminati tranny.
So I would suggest to you that if the Victoria's Secret models, who we clearly know now, and they're out there half nude, or many of them transgendered, they're not transgendered, they're Baphomets. They are transhuman, gender inverted androgynes, I guess you would say, because they are looked at as gods, goddesses, whatever. And of course, in 1991, well, how long ago was that? That was quite a while ago, you guys, and I would submit to you in 1991, we're just hearing about it. And something must have happened in 1991 where they were afraid some of that might get out, and they're just covering their butts, telling us what they're doing again. So this supposedly became the first transgendered woman to pose naked in Playboy. And now she's going to open up about her experience and everything. Here's where the picture came from. And there's the little boy. And it's, I can't even, I don't even want to read it. But what I do want to do is show this picture. Now, can you spot where there could be possibly other transgenders here? They're not transgenders. They're marketing them as transgenders. This is a CIA operation. They are Baphomets. The CIA is all of these reptilian bloodlines, these hybrids, these clones, and super soldiers. And I would suggest to you supermodels such as Victoria's Secret and these things right here are considered to be assets, CIA assets. And what would be more blackmailable than someone, thinking that they're with a woman, and then they find out they're with not a transgender, but a transhuman CIA asset, a gender-inverted CIA asset, a man, born a man. But look, I mean, come on. There's a lot of stuff going on here to go back and look at some of these people. Am I saying they're all the CIA assets? Well, yeah, they're all CIA assets. Were they all born men? No, I think some of them are underage. And I think many of them are underage. Maybe they were born women, but they are programmed assets, CIA assets. Super soldiers, if you will, but they're not really fighting. They're out there gathering intel. and they are, many of them, men. Now, this is called Open Your Mind, and it talks about Hugh Hefner, Warren Beatty, Jack Nicholson, Kirk Douglas, underground tunnels all connected to their mansions. And Hugh Hefner, right here, Playboy Mansion tunnels. And you can see here that these Playboy Mansion tunnels to celebrity homes. And we did hear all about this. And you can see here where it all goes down. So I started thinking about the McMartin Daycare Center. And that was a big case back in the 80s. And those kids all told stories about what we're finding out is true now. So let's stop and think about this. How do these kids even know to lie about something like that? It was so outrageous. Robes and candles, and they're having sex with animals, or made to have sex with animals. They're watching them kill other kids. They're watching them kill animals. So you're like kind of thinking, wow, this is really crazy. But then you find out it's like 80 kids. Well, they marketed it as, or spun it as mass hysteria, you know, from the parents, is what they said, that the parents were feeding the information to the kids and getting them, and it was like a mass hysterical situation for all concerned. Well, and they swore there were no tunnels, and they did some kind of fake news story where they said, no, we're digging, there's no tunnels. Well, they went to go do construction later on, and they found tunnels, just exactly like what those kids said. And everything those kids were describing is what we're learning right now is really going on underground, under LA. So I had a map. I found out what the old address of the McMartin School is, and it's 931 Manhattan Beach Boulevard, Manhattan Beach. And here's some photos of it, which right now it's a busy intersection, but I guess back then it was not. It was more like a road. Certainly from the time I went to art school at Ringling, over in Sarasota, all the roads that were small are now big highways. Now they're like 2 lanes on each side. And they were just 2-lane roads when I was in art school. So I could see where it would have changed. But here it is right here, McMartin Preschool. And it looks like there's a sidewalk right next to it. And of course, here you can see the Playboy Mansion, and there's some photographs. There's the mansion, and here's what it looks like from the street. So it looks like you go pretty far up there. But I'm sure if you did a tour of this mansion, you would notice all kinds of occult symbols, statues, everything. And yeah, here it might as well be, Queen Elizabeth or somebody. And of course, picture of himself up there, or her, whatever. I question everything at this point. Oh, and here's the famous grotto. Can you imagine how many diseases and germs, and talk about COVID? This is probably where it came from. And again, there's another gate. You can also see here where it's a straight line to the Getty over here, but also that the Getty is in, well, actually, if you move up on this map and look at where, now this is where McMartin School was supposed to be, right here. And so if you open that up, you can't really see too much. They don't really have a picture of it. But earlier I saw it, and it was like just a building, like a regular small business building on a kind of a busy street. So the whole thing was torn down, I forget, in the 90s maybe. and then something was built over it, and that's when they found all the tunnels. So the whole there's no tunnels. That was a lie. Also, well, look at here. This is right lining up with the airport, which lines a perfect straight line to the Playboy Mansion and also to the Getty. Here, you could see that this also is a straight line to the Getty McMartin School. So it's very, very interesting that all these things, and you know, look, I didn't just pull this McMartin School thing out of a hat. This was big. Also, there was Michael Aquino traveling up and down the coast from San Francisco to Los Angeles, hitting all the daycare centers there. And they had the Presidio in particular, but there were several daycare centers up and down there where they were all saying, they were describing Michael Aquino. So I don't know how much more, how many people look like Michael Aquino. But they all described somebody that looked like him. And then when they saw him on the news, because they were questioning Michael Aquino, because he's the only one that had access to all those places. And he's the only one that looks like that. Not only that, they described his wife thing. And they described his house, the altar, everything. So how many people have that? It got so limited down to where it couldn't be anybody else but Michael Aquino who was doing this, all through a tunnel system. So I really think it's going to be staggering when we find out about all of this stuff. Now, back here it has the darkest secrets surrounding the Playboy Mansion. The Playboy Mansion might have closed its doors, but it has always been a place of great intrigue. Well, looking through all of this, I think they're almost getting ready. Let's see. Yeah, April 19th, 2021. It feels like they're getting ready for this stuff to come out. And to say, oh no, this has already come out. This is just this. What you're hearing is just a gross exaggeration. This is what they've been doing time and time again. But this vast underground tunnel system that appears to be presenting itself. Holly Madison claims the gates weren't to keep unwanted guests out, to keep them in. And look at this. Man, talk about... there's a clone, that this is not what it appears to be right here. This is something else. I don't know what. And I mean, it is really interesting that these are held up as the perfect women, and we don't even know really what's going on with that. There's so much hair and makeup and boobs and spray tan and, glitter, jewelry, whatever. But when you really look at it, there's a lot of straight jawlines going on there, including his. I guess he's a real guy. I don't know. Who knows? Jeez. So I think it's really, really interesting. Here is Reddit. Playboy Mansion being dug up, tunnels inside. The Playboy Mansion is currently being dug up, and weirdly enough, there are underground tunnels leading elsewhere underneath the mansion. And over here, looking for the answer, one says, I always thought Hef seemed like a government agent. Never seemed like a real person. Doesn't look like a real person either. Like a fictional character. Now that I think about it, Warren Beatty seems to be the same way. And it says supposedly straight to Jack Nicholson's house and other celebs. Hugh Hef was a pimp. This person writes AI 89 nut or whatever. Yeah, listen, wake up and smell the coffee. Grow up. He says Nicholson, Beatty, and Kahn lived miles away from Playboy Mansion. Nicholson's house on Mulholland was about 10 miles away on a ridge in Santa Monica Mountains at elevation of about 12,000 feet. Tunneling that far would have been wildly expensive and extravagant, and why those three bachelors had no problem visiting the mansion via the front gate. Let me explain it to you, okay? First of all, the tunnels were already there through an ancient system, okay? So that's the whole reason they went out there. And second of all, we're talking about buying and selling human beings. We're talking about children for sex, for adrenochrome harvesting. We're talking about a litany of crimes against humanity. They need the tunnels to keep it underground. Not only that, that's where all the kids are. That's where all the MK Ultra sex slaves are. That's where all the assets are. And so they want to go down there to the cloning center. They want to go down there to these places. And so, they need these underground tunnels. And not only that, they're stealing our money and they're covering up building these tunnels with other projects. And I could go on and on and on. You need to wake up and smell the coffee. And of course, someone's commenting here about Bill Maher being related to Hefner, which we got from the Q posts already, and they look very, very much alike. And there's an article, Jack Dick Nicholson's secret tunnel to the Playboy Mansion. Ooh, God. Ugh. Man. If they have so much money and so much technology, why do they look like this? Dear God in heaven. Anyway, so that's my video for today. I know it's shorter than normal, but I'm going to leave you with a little bit more of this illusion being presented and, get you to at least accept the idea that they do a dang good job, and it really is hard to tell unless you're alerted to it. Yes, Hugh Hefner and Playboy and all of that is just as much a lie as everything else. And it's just another version of Victoria's Secret op. These are supermodels, super soldiers, CIA assets, and they're going to be underage. They're going to be not the gender they say they are. They're going to be all kinds of kinky, MK Ultra sex kitten programmed slaves so that they can go in there and do the most disgusting things with these people and video it and have it ready to give back to, Hugh Hef, the character that walks around in his jammies all day long with a pipe and a silk robe and all of that stuff. Can you think of anything more? How depressing. He walks around in his pajamas all day. Jeez, get up off your ass and do something. Anyway, the whole thing, it'll be real interesting to find out, but I can tell you right now, it's not what it appears to be. And I hope you enjoyed this little montage of other things that are not what they appear to be. And I am signing off for the day.
Yeah, that's going to be their god in the new transgendered world order. Transhumanist, transgendered. There's good old Bruno Mars, and Lady Gaga is a tranny, obviously. You can tell by the face. But, they've done a lot of work on the body. It's just a disguise. She always wears a disguise anyway, right? Guarantee you, if you saw her walking down the street, you wouldn't even recognize her. You don't know what she really looks like. She's always in some weird disguise. She's a tranny. These women are pretty large women overall. They're trannies. They're muscular. They have long legs. Actually, I was asking my wife about this. I said, hey, what do you think? She's, oh, yeah, Victoria's Secret models. They're very beautiful. Yeah, and I feel sorry for a lot of women. I know I think that's one of the Jenner girls, a tranny, all right? Kim Kardashian's not the only tranny in that family, or Bruce Jenner, whatever their names are now, Poor old, what's his name? Kanye West having an Illuminati breakdown. We'll have to see how that develops. They may try to kill him off. His last show that he performed, he was talking about how everything's a lie. But who knows what's going on there. So, I feel sorry for the women. I think women are, this whole Victoria's Secret industry, this whole whatever company, great brand, right? One of the most popular brands. Look at this one, man. Look at that. I mean, just look at the torso, the hips, classic male torso.
IQD or the XRP? The answer, he says, is the IQD flips first and then the XRP follows fast. And that does make sense. Iraq's revaluation is the event. It's the trigger. It resets regional liquidity. It realigns trade and it floods the system with pressure. The pressure needs the rails. Fast, neutral, compliant rails. That's when XRP ignites. IQD is the fuse, XRP is the ignition. So let's just keep an eye on that and see what happens as Iraq's, like I just said, their stock exchange is down. Let's see what happens when they come back up. Let's click to this one. This is from Crypto Geek. Breaking, the U.S. Treasury has officially approved XRP for settling national debt. That's huge. A historic milestone for crypto adoption. The XRP ledger, XRPL, is on fire, and the CTF token is dominating the DeFi space as the #1 DeFi asset on the XRP ledger. CTF is gaining serious traction, supercharged by a major partnership with Amazon and Walmart. With projected $20 billion market cap, the CTF token could skyrocket from 0.92 cents to an incredible $748 per token. Only 119 million tokens exist. Supply is tight, demand is soaring, and the real-world XRPL utility is exploding. As I've been talking about, it's all about the tariffs, the XRP ledger, the gold, and then we will see all the cryptocurrencies, not the cryptocurrencies, the revaluation of currencies. This is another one I have put up. There is something big happening behind the scenes, and it's too big to ignore. Let's break it down. This week, NASA, yes, NASA, the civilian space agency, confirmed it detected 3 massive explosions and 3 thermal nuclear hotspots deep underground at Iran's nuclear facilities. I'm sure you all heard about the explosions in Iran. Not the Pentagon, not the mainstream media, but it was NASA. Why would NASA be announcing battlefield nuclear level events? Simple, the explosions were so large they triggered the Earth monitoring satellites designed to detect surface temperature changes. It was impossible to hide, and using NASA makes them scientific instead of military, keeping tensions from boiling over immediately. This wasn't a strike, it was a direct hit inside underground nuclear reactors, something normal bombs cannot easily reach. Can we maybe say rods of God? That's not him saying that, I'm saying that. This was coordinated and surgical, and it wasn't just physical damage. Reports show over 750 casualties already, with the number still rising. Now, the bigger timeline. Massive shifts are happening with the Iraq-US relations. Major financial system realignments, Brics, BIS movements, M2 surges. Suddenly, $5.2 trillion in new U.S. trade investments secured by Trump. Iran's influence getting smashed from the inside without a public war declaration. Now enter Kim Clement's prophecy. Iran will fall from within, but what they built underground will be exposed and neutralized. There will be great confusion. Is it war? Is it peace? Follow this with the Middle East will shift and the wealth of nations will begin to flow to my people. The event matches that prophecy almost perfectly, and it's happening in real time. Iran's nuclear capability, the same one used for leverage, threats, and chaos in the Middle East, just got shattered from within. No warning, no headlines screaming World War III, just surgical disruption hidden behind a scientific statement. This wasn't random, it wasn't accidental. It was a covert removal of power. And just so it happens to align with the same window where global money systems are quietly being prepared for a hard transition. When historians look back, this weekend might be seen as the day the board got reset without a shot fired publicly. The era of shadow control is ending. So that was a huge piece being put together. Let's go to this one. Breaking, the U.S. Treasury has officially approved XRP. I just read that one. Sorry about that. Okay, the weekend news cap, what actually matters. This is 589 Bull again. Marco Rubio just met Iraq's foreign minister in D.C. Strategic investment talks locked in behind closed doors. SEC Commissioner Atkins came out swinging, called out the old SEC leadership for killing innovation, confirmed crypto is now front and center under Trump's administration. CME Group officially launched XRP futures. No SEC resistance, no fanfare, institutions loading silently. DTCC is expanding tokenized assets settlement behind the scenes. They are wiring up the real rails while normies argue over meme coins. Liquidity index M2 broke out. Bitcoin hasn't moved yet, but it's loaded like a spring ready to snap. XRP and tokenized assets are waiting right behind it. Gaza pressures move. Trump publicly leans on Netanyahu to be good to Gaza, laying the groundwork for the real Middle East reconstruction corridors. IQD switch prep confirmed. Economic and security alignment discussions running hotter than the headline admit. And bottom line, again, we talk about the rails are built, liquidity is loaded, the political pieces are moving. They're not warning you. They're wiring the new system while the crowd still are arguing over the old ones. Stay ahead, stay awake. It's all being done in real time. It's being done right in your face, but we're not, you have to really look. Most people are not paying attention. Here's another one. Basically, Iraq filed bankruptcy on the current financial system. Bankruptcy on the current financial system, that means we will bring the new rate so we can open the 2025 budget. This is also exciting. Breaking, Iraq just confirmed it's integrating directly with multiple U.S. banks as global correspondent hubs. This is the final connection before Forex activation. What did I just say? Their stock exchange is down from May 1st to 4th. Mazar Salih, advisor to Iraq's prime minister, just said, linking with U.S. banks provides financing, credit lines, digital banking, and international systems. Everything in the world globally is being linked up through the blockchain XRP system. Translation, Iraq's banking system just locked into the global financial grid. No more isolation, no more lag. They're calling it integration with the international banking system. Rapid, open, direct coordination, raising national banks to the global level. That's Forex language. That's SWIFT plus ISO 20022 compliance. That's a pre-launch checklist being closed out. This opens the door for full currency normalization, international clearing and settlement, direct dollar trade routes, digital rails to handle massive cross-border flows. They're flipping the switch behind the curtain, and the public move comes next. Based on what we know, Iraq is 0 to 30 days away from full Forex readiness. The budget tables are locked, execution locks synced to something bigger. The U.S. banking ties are live. The CBHQ ribbon could drop any moment. The signal has never been clearer. If you've been waiting, this is it. The system's wiring is done. The volume is rising and the liquidity floodgate is almost wide open. Iraq is ready. Are you? And this last one. So this is from Moonsoon. Fellow IQD investors, I've been diving deep into Iraq's economic situation and I'm more convinced than ever an RV is on the horizon and it's coming quickly. After studying the recent bankruptcy announcement, oil reserves, digital reforms, the global pressure, everything points to a major evaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Let me break it down for you. First, the pros are stacking up. Iraq's government just declared bankruptcy, pulling over $3 trillion IQD and tax trusts to pay salaries. This mirrors Kuwait's crisis before your revaluation in the 1990s. History is repeating itself. Kuwait faced a similar financial collapse, revalued, and came out stronger. And I believe Iraq is on the same path. Iraq's massive oil reserves, the largest ever reported, and top-tier gold holdings gave it assets to back a stronger dinar. With oil accounting for 90% of the revenue, these resources are game-changing. The shift to digital dinar is another huge win. Digital payments have skyrocketed, showing Iraq is modernizing fast. This transparency reduces cash dependency and curbs corruption, paving the way for a credible RV. And to that, the IMF's SDR's allocation. Remember Swisher's 1776 post, which boasts Iraq's revenues and international support from the US, the UNDP. Everything is aligning perfectly. On the global stage, Trump's tariffs are pushing against currency manipulation, and the rate of 1310 IQD to USD screams under revaluation. The US has also helped Iraq reduce Iran's grip, tackling a major source of corruption and dollar smuggling. Speaking of corruption, yes, there's a red flag, and I have to mention this. The 2020 tax scandal where $2.5 billion or more was embezzled still looms large. But I believe we're past that. With the U.S. oversight in digital reforms, Iraq has made strides to clean up its act, especially with Iran's influence waning. This was the biggest con compared to Kuwait's smoother revaluation, but I'm confident it will be addressed to a degree that won't derail the RV.
Now another big name, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, is making news here. Mr. Gaddafi pitched his tent on Donald Trump's property in Bedford and caused a stir. It was not a camping tent, but a ceremonial tent for receiving guests.
Hillary basically handed Libya over to the Bronfmans and the Mega Group. She appointed the Canadian Sarah Bronfman as head of the United States Libya Chamber of Commerce. This is Sarah Bronfman's husband, Bassett Igtet, frontman for the Bronfmans and the Mega Group. They even tried to make Sarah's husband, Igtet, into the presidency of Libya. Basically, the Bronfman family coordinated the coup in Libya. In March 2011, he hosted General Abdul Fattah Yunis, former Interior Minister of Libya under the Gaddafi government. Well, he turned into the leader of the rebel armed forces, the traitor. Sarah Bronfman's husband facilitated dialogue between Yunis and NATO during a critical time for the rebel movement, which ultimately saw the NATO-led 2011 military intervention into Libya to defend the Libyan people from Gaddafi forces, which is obviously bullshit.
Today there is swine flu. Perhaps tomorrow there'll be fish flu. Because sometimes we produce viruses by controlling them. It is a commercial business. Capitalist companies produce viruses so that they can generate and sell vaccinations. This is very shameful and poor ethics.
Libya had perhaps the highest standard of living in all of Africa during Gaddafi's tenure. He built a wonderful educational system that included scholarships for excellent students to go to college abroad, a national fund from oil revenues, and the world's largest irrigation system, the great man-made river which was bombed to hell by Obama in 2011. He became a hero because he believed and implemented free healthcare and free education for all citizens. He provided a primary house at a very low cost to every citizen in the country. There were more women in the workforce in Libya than in most Arab countries. He increased compulsory education from 6 to 9 years, which boosted female literacy from one of the lowest to one of the highest in the region. By the time he was ousted, there were more women than men at university. He encouraged women to take up jobs such as teaching, nursing, and administrative work, and for them also to become pharmacists, doctors, dentists, and also engineers. He gave the gift of $50,000 to the young married couple to start their lives. He said the oil revenue belonged to the people of Libya, and at the time of Gaddafi's assassination on the 20th of October 2011, Libya had a national reserve totaling $150 billion and zero debt. Gaddafi was trying to create a single African currency linked to gold, as he had a dream of a debt-free Africa. He was willing to front up to 80 or 90% of the gold to do so, and wanted to buy a satellite to allow Africa have its own telecommunications and not have to be dependent on the Western oligarchs. This move by Gaddafi would have broken the African economic dependency on the West. Gaddafi thus angered the Western bankers, since Africa no longer would pay the annual 500 million fee to Europe for the use of its satellites, and of course no self-respecting banker was willing to fund a project that frees people from their claws. There was no electricity bill in Libya. Electricity was free for all of its citizens. There was no interest on loans. Banks in Libya were state-owned, and loans were given to all of its citizens at zero interest. Having a home was considered a human right in Libya. If Libyans wanted to take up farming as a career, they would have received farming land, a farming house, equipment, seeds and livestock to kickstart their farms, all for free. If Libyans could not find the education or medical facilities they needed, the government funded them to go abroad, and it was not only paid for, but they got almost $1,600 a month for accommodation and car allowance. If a Libyan bought a car, the government used to subsidize 50% of the price. A portion of every Libyan oil sale was credited directly to the bank accounts of all Libyan citizens. Education and medical treatments were free in Libya. Before Gaddafi, only 25% of Libyans were literate. Today the figure is over 90%. As you can see in this video, Gaddafi was loved by his people. Can you imagine any other leader this close to the people getting this kind of a reception? Also, look how clean the roads are, completely different to Libya now. Libya was beautiful, a rich country before Obama attacked it using his mercenaries, who the media called the Libyan rebels. The Libyan rebels would later be rebranded as the Syrian rebels. Obama did the same thing in both Libya and Syria, where they lied about both Gaddafi and Assad by saying they attacked their own people when instead they were defending their people against Obama's Libyan and Syrian rebels. Before and during the NATO-led campaign, Western media tried to portray him as some kind of monster to promote and justify the war against him. Unfortunately, the gullible public fell for all the anti-Gaddafi propaganda. Gaddafi was a hero who stood up to the deep state for his people.
This is not an outcome that the United States or any of our partners sought. Even yesterday, the international community offered Muammar Gaddafi the opportunity to pursue an immediate ceasefire, one that stopped the violence against civilians and the advances of Gaddafi's forces. But despite the hollow words of his government, he has ignored that opportunity. His attacks on his own people have continued.
As a result of his attempts to free Africa, the elected Libyan leader was beaten and sodomized by Obama's Libyan rebels with a sword and was executed on live camera. Gaddafi led one of the most prosperous countries in Africa. He was
Several very interesting things about the Spanish flu. First of all, it didn't start in Spain. Secondly, it wasn't a flu. There's more, but let's start with these two, shall we? If it didn't start in Spain, then where did it? In the US. If it wasn't a flu virus, what was it? It was a bacteria that caused severe and in most cases lethal pneumonia. According to a 2008 National Institute of Health paper, bacterial pneumonia was the killer in a minimum of 92.7% of the autopsies reviewed. So why do we call it the Spanish flu? As a decoy, a smokescreen to hide the truth. These people prefer to hear a convenient lie. The first cases of bacterial pneumonia in 1918 trace back to a military base in Fort Riley, Kansas. During the first half of 1918, an experimental bacterial meningitis vaccine cultured in horses by the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research in New York, now the Rockefeller University, was injected into soldiers at Fort Riley. The so-called Spanish flu was a vaccine experiment gone horribly wrong. Well, that's what we, the people, would say. The cabal would refer to it differently. They would call it an experiment with the best outcome ever. Millions of American soldiers were vaccinated with this experimental serum. 2 million of them went overseas. They fought under poor sanitary conditions, so the bacteria spread like wildfire wherever they went. The story was then spread that these soldiers would come home with all sorts of European diseases, so the American population was vaccinated as well. On top of everything else, the vaccines were distributed all over Europe. Only the vaccinated died. Healthy men and women in the prime of their lives died, not the elderly, as would have been the case if it were a flu virus. Who was in charge of that distribution and mass vaccination program? The Rockefeller Institute. Who was the main scientist in charge? Dr. Frederick Gates. According to Gates, they injected random dosages of an experimental bacterial meningitis vaccine into soldiers. Those who survived became cloud adults, meaning they spread the bacteria to others, even the non-vaccinated. Amazing coincidence, right? Frederick Gates then, Bill Gates now. Rockefeller Initiative then, Rockefeller Initiative now. Closed down societies then, closed down societies now. All for our own good, our own safety. Back then. And now.
New York have been hit by airplanes. In Washington, there is a large fire at the Pentagon. The Pentagon has been evacuated. And there, as you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing.
Because everybody, once you have seen building 7, there is no way back. You can cheat on yourself, and you can try to suppress it, but you cannot. You have seen it, and then there's no way back. It's not very healthy, to lie to yourself and say, no, I didn't see that. But many people do, because it's simply too painful.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. It seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because they don't really know where to turn. That's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building. Amazing, incredible picture word.
Too far-fetched.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
See what you see and not what you're supposed to see.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is William Cooper, and Alan Weiner has asked me to take the microphone on this probably worst day in the history of the entire world. It wasn't just those planes flying into those buildings. It couldn't be. Because those planes hit almost at the top of the building. They were in the top third or one quarter of those towers and could not have injured the structural integrity of the building on the bottom. Also, the only place that fire was occurring was at that area and above.
That's what caused me suspicion as to why the whole building would collapse.
Something blew up on the major structural buildings down at the bottom of those buildings that brought them down, I can assure you of that.
That's why I...
The propaganda and lies are getting absolutely ridiculous regarding Ukraine and Russia. I'm going to show you two clips. One is a clip of a news agency basically calling out multiple fake articles that are going around. You probably have seen one or two of them, and it will blow your mind. This second clip I'm going to show you is a patriot flying into Kyiv, getting into Ukraine. Very difficult. He actually manages to do it, and what he sees is basically different movie sets in different places, and it's all a media setup. It's all a setup for a false narrative. You need to see these two clips. Check these out.
What's on your radar, Kim?
Well, there's no doubt emotions are running very high in the war between Russia and Ukraine. People are upset, in shock, and disbelief. But one thing that isn't helping at all is the unbelievable amount of fake images and videos being spread, not only on social media, but also by legitimate news outlets. I even made the mistake myself here on Rising on Friday when I stated I was impressed with Zelensky getting into full military gear to fight on the front lines. Turns out that was an image from last April. I fell for it. I apologize. Unfortunately, I'm not alone in falling for it. Bild, a political news outlet in Germany, shared a video of what looked to be a horrific bombing by the Russians in Kiev during one of their broadcasts. But it turns out the footage was from a 2015 chemical explosion in Tianjin, China. Newsmax used a photo of a crying older woman standing in front of her devastated home with the caption, "The current devastation in Ukraine." But the photo was from 2015. An Italian news broadcast used footage from the video game War Thunder when talking about the war in Ukraine. No doubt viewers seeing a rain of missiles were horrified. So I want to go through some of the most egregious examples of the fake news circulating around, but I have to preface this because we are in a Western nation that is supportive of Ukraine in this conflict. The vast majority of the fake news that we see circulating is anti-Russian. So I'll be debunking a lot of this type of information. However, I have no doubt similar fake news is circulating in Russia and in pro-Russian countries, showing fake news that is disparaging of Ukrainians. We're just not seeing much of it, so I can't debunk it. So keep this in mind before you lash out at me and call me a pro-Putin Russian asset at the end of this segment. So let's start with what I think is the most astonishing example of fake news circulating. It was being reported that 13 heroic soldiers on Snake Island were confronted by a Russian warship. The audio recording shows the Russians telling the Ukrainians to lay down their arms to avoid bloodshed and unjustified deaths. The Ukrainians are infamously heard saying, "Russian warship, go F yourself." It was then reported they fought valiantly until they were all killed by the Russians. President Zelensky even announced he would posthumously award the men medals of valor. Well, it turns out whomever claimed they had died was mistaken. Instead, the Ukrainian border guard disputed whether anyone was killed, and shortly after, video footage emerged of the Russians giving food and water to the 82 men, not 13, from Snake Island, who were then being transferred to Crimea. Some of the soldiers have now given interviews saying if the Russians wanted to bury him, they would have, and now they instead will go home to their families. Another shocking video was of a tank swerving in the street and running over a civilian car. Totally shocking video, jaw-dropping. But thank goodness the person actually survived this crushing experience. Media was reporting this as a Russian tank and using it to show the callousness of the Russians and their invasion. But it turns out this was actually a Ukrainian tank that had lost control and accidentally ran over that vehicle. And I'm sure everyone involved was relieved that person was okay. Russian tanks are marked with white Z's, by the way, for future reference when you're looking at any video. Now, many of you saw the heart-wrenching video of the father saying a very tearful goodbye to his wife and daughter as he goes off to battle. This was being reported as a Ukrainian man sending his family to safety while he fights against the Russians. Well, the man is Ukrainian, sort of, I suppose. He's one of the rebels in the Donetsk People's Republic. He was sending his family to Russia for safety while he stayed behind to fight Ukrainian forces. The original video was posted by the mayor of his town several days before the Russians invaded Ukraine. And of course, I can't leave out the ghost of Kiev. There's footage of a fighter pilot downing several Russian jets. The video, of course, went viral with millions of views. The claims are this pilot took down 6 Russian jets in one day. But now, by the way, that number's jumped up to 10 Russian jets being taken down. Now, a fighter pilot who takes down 5 planes throughout the course of their entire career is called an ace. So to have 6 in one day or even 10 in 1 week is incredible. It's actually unbelievable, in fact. And it turns out the footage is from a video game called Digital Combat Simulator. But even with this video being debunked, the former Ukrainian president, Poroshenko, is tweeting that it's real and even shared a masked photo of the pilot. And there's a lot of wild claims going around of who the pilot is. There's a lot of talk that maybe the pilot's even a woman. And of course, it turns out that old photo, that photo there is actually an old photo that's recirculated. So it's still unlikely the ghost of Kiev is real. But a lot of people fell for it, and you can't blame them for wanting to boost up morale, I suppose. Now, the list of this fake news or fake videos and images just is endless on social media, totally endless. I could not possibly list all of them. But one thing I do want to mention is that, the reason why this is so dangerous to have all of this fake video and circulating around and people believing it is that it is heart-wrenching to watch. So when people see a Russian tank running over a civilian car, what they think is a Russian tank running over a civilian car, or they see, just these really, really heart-wrenching and or even callous videos, it raises up emotions to a level where that is maybe too much, right? And this person thinks, oh, now I've got to fight. Things are worse than they actually maybe are. And it causes people to get highly emotional, and it can inflame a situation to be much, much worse. So, Robbie and Ryan, I'm sure you guys have seen many of the fake different videos that have been circulating online. And it's tough to even know what is true and what isn't true. I'm sitting there for hours, researching just to make sure. And there was one, by the way, I do want to mention. It was a CNN, and it said that this particular journalist was killed in, the first American to die in Ukraine. And then there was another image that was shown side by side on social saying, but CNN had also claimed that this person had died in Afghanistan. That was fake. It was from a fake account, a fake CNN account, making it look like they
will go down as the greatest political mistake in modern South African history.
Goodbye, GNU.
Seeing the president is now cleaning house, I would like to suggest that he sweeps in front of his own doorstep before he sweeps in front of the DA's doorstep. And so, we're calling on the president to fire those ministers and deputy ministers involved in the Zondo Commission report, involved in serious charges of corruption, and those who have been involved in recent weeks of misleading this parliament.
So apparently DA Minister was let go because he was asking too many questions.
Why Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield was really fired, one will see it was because he was doing his job. He was asking uncomfortable questions about the lottery tender award by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. He had asked some very uncomfortable questions about the transformation fund that is busy being set up by that department, and he had raised serious concerns about some of the persons being nominated for the board of the IDC. We have given the President 48 hours to act similarly against the other members of his party who are guilty or facing serious charges or who are mentioned in the Zondo Commission report.
Could this be the beginning of the end? What do you think will happen in 48 hours?
The Vatican, there are 32 archways on each side of the courtyard, with a giant obelisk in the middle. The Pope's cassock has 32 buttons, and his head represents the 33rd. The United Nations flag shows the globe divided into 33 sections encircled by olive branches. The flag also happens to be blue, just like the first 3 blue degrees of Masonry. 33 is the highest degree of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Freemason, and Disneyland has a Club 33. During World War II, 33rd degree Winston Churchill gave us the V for victory, 2-finger salute, which since the 60s became peace. Before it stood for victory or peace, it was a symbol of the 33rd degree. There are 3 joints to the knuckle on 2 fingers, making 33. Then held apart like a V is about 33 degrees. Everything changes at 33.
The recent visit by Afrikaner representatives to the White House has sparked controversy, with the South African presidency labeling it an attempt to sabotage President Ramaphosa's diplomatic efforts with the U.S. They claim this delegation is undermining crucial work aimed at improving relations, especially after Ramaphosa's recent meeting with Trump. The Afrikaners are pushing for farm attacks to be classified as a priority crime and for the ANC to condemn the controversial kill the Boer rhetoric. Yet, the presidency argues that murder is already a priority crime in South Africa and emphasizes that the majority of farm attack victims are not just farmers but farm workers too. This issue is complex and should not be reduced to racial divides. It's about addressing safety for all in rural communities, not just one group.
The government don't care because just last night the petrol price went up. If they cared about us, they would not have done that.
Absolutely.
The only reason the petrol price went up is not because international oil prices have been fluctuating with Iran and Israel. It's because the government is responsible for probably half of what you pay for every drop of petrol. You know what they do? They take that money, half of what you pay for every drop of petrol, and they just put it straight into the treasury. They do the same with customs and duties. They do the same with Eskom. They do the same with municipal rates and taxes.
Yeah.
And then you still have to pay a personal income tax. And by the way, if you're running a company and that company is actually managing to make a profit, which is a hard thing to do, they tax the company on that profit.
Yes.
They then tax you, if you're a shareholder or director in that company, for your dividends, again, after they've already taxed you for the profits of the company.
The drive for Cape independence is gaining momentum as 4 leading organizations unite under a memorandum of understanding. Together, the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, Cape Exit, the Cape Independence Party, and the Referendum Party are committed to a shared vision of an independent Western Cape. They believe the time is ripe to push for independence, fueled by the failures of the current government to address economic growth, unemployment, and crime. With international support on the horizon, they're focused on 2 key goals: organizing a referendum and expanding their political presence. This movement aims to ensure that all citizens benefit from genuine non-racialism, economic growth, and the protection of our diverse cultural heritage. Together, we can make Cape independence a reality. At the recent Brics summit in Rio, Brazil unveiled a new guarantee fund through the New Development Bank, aiming to cut financing costs and draw in private investment. For every dollar guaranteed, we could see filers to $10 in private capital mobilized. Pretty impressive. Notably, China's Premier Li Qiang and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov are attending, while Putin skips out to dodge an ICC warrant. Meanwhile, Indian PM Modi is on a 5-nation tour, including stops in Botswana and Brazil, to strengthen ties and boost collaboration among member nations. Exciting times ahead for Brics.